He should have been my biggest exposé, not my last chance at survival. The irony wasn't lost on me when I opened my eyes to the taste of blood in my mouth and found Adrian Hale, the lawyer I had once dragged through the mud in my reports, bound to the same chair, his shoulder pressed against mine. "You've got to be kidding me," I croaked, my voice rough, my wrists burning against the ropes. "Trust me, sweetheart," he murmured with that bitter laugh of his. "This is the last place I'd want to share with you." The warehouse smelled of rust and gasoline, its hollow silence broken only by the sound of our breathing and the occasional drip of water echoing from somewhere in the shadows. My heart pounded, not only from fear but from the absurdity of being trapped with the very man I had once built my career tearing down. Adrian Hale, golden boy of the legal world, brilliant, ruthless, worshipped in courtrooms across the country, until I uncovered the corruption tied to his name, until I painted him as a monster in front of millions of readers. Now here we were, both stripped of control, waiting for whoever had put us here to return. And maybe, deep down, I hated how much I noticed the warmth of his body pressed to mine in the cold. Ethan Winters, that was my name, and journalism had been my battlefield. For years, I chased the stories no one else dared to touch. Dirty politicians, corrupt corporations, even the legal system itself. My weapon was truth, and my shield was stubbornness. I thought it made me untouchable until the day I exposed Adrian Hale. Back then, I thought he deserved it. Slick lawyer, brilliant at twisting the law in favor of the guilty, cashing in favors, rubbing elbows with men who thought themselves kings of America. I found the paper trail, the shady connections, and I didn't hesitate. I published everything. But looking at him now, hair disheveled, shirt bloodied, his once pristine arrogance cracked, I wondered if I had only told half the story. "Whoever did this, it's because of you," I muttered, though the accusation felt shaky in my throat. "Please," Adrian said, his tone low, almost weary. "You've made enough enemies for both of us." My jaw tightened. He wasn't wrong. Exposing corruption made me a target. But to admit that now, to admit we might both be here because of me, felt unbearable. Then came the sound, the echo of footsteps, heavy, deliberate, like someone wanted us to know they were coming. A door screeched open on rusted hinges, letting in a flood of fading daylight. Two men walked in, their faces hidden by shadows. Their voices were low, one carrying a southern drawl, the other cold and sharp like steel. "Looks like our guests are awake," one of them sneered. Adrian's shoulder pressed harder into mine. It wasn't affection, it was strategy. We were in this together whether we liked it or not. Hours bled into each other. They didn't kill us right away. That almost made it worse. They circled us, taunted us, dropped breadcrumbs of why we were here. Names of men I had written about, cases Adrian had touched, money, secrets, power. When they left us alone again, the silence was unbearable. My wrists ached, my throat was dry, and the shadows of night pressed heavy against the broken windows. "I don't need you," I whispered. It was more to myself than to him. "Yes, you do," Adrian replied softly, with infuriating certainty. "You've always needed me. You just didn't know it." I turned my head, meeting his eyes for the first time in hours. There was something in them I hadn't expected. Not arrogance, not anger, something gentler, hidden under the weight of regret. "You destroyed me," he said quietly, his voice breaking in a way I had never heard. "But maybe you saved me too." And in that moment, despite the ropes, despite the darkness pressing in, despite everything I thought I knew about him, my heart stumbled. That was the beginning, the shift I hadn't seen coming. Because survival does strange things to a man. It strips him bare, tears down the walls, and forces him to face the truth. And the truth was this. The more the night dragged on, the more I realized Adrian Hale wasn't the monster I had written about. He was human, flawed, broken, and somewhere in the mess of it all, he was becoming the only thing keeping me from falling apart. And maybe, just maybe, that terrified me more than the men who wanted us dead. The ropes cut deeper into my skin as the night thickened around us. My wrists burned raw, but my mind wouldn't stop racing. Every creak of the warehouse, every shifting shadow felt like a countdown. Adrian hadn't spoken for almost an hour. He sat unnervingly still beside me, his breathing measured, as if conserving every drop of strength. I envied his calm, though it was the kind of calm I didn't trust. It was the calm of someone who had already lived through hell. Finally, I broke the silence. "Why aren't you panicking?" His laugh was low, dry. "Because panic is a luxury, Ethan. One I lost a long time ago." There it was again, the fracture in his voice, the subtle reminder that he wasn't the man I'd written into infamy. The Adrian Hale I had crucified in print was a man who bathed in power, who smirked his way through scandal. The one beside me now looked like someone still bleeding from wounds I hadn't seen. But before I could push him, before I could demand answers, the sound returned. Footsteps, heavier this time. The door slammed open, the crash ricocheting through the metal walls. One of the men stepped inside, the one with the steel voice. His eyes were sharp, feral, and when they landed on me, I felt like prey. "Journalist," he said, the word curdling in his mouth. "You thought shining a light would keep you safe? You thought dragging men's names into your pretty little columns would protect you." I wanted to answer, to bite back with the sharpness that had always been my shield. But the truth was a lump in my throat. Because he was right. Somewhere along the way, I had believed the story would protect me. That exposing monsters meant I couldn't become their target. He crouched low, his face inches from mine. I smelled tobacco and whiskey on his breath. "You and your lawyer friend here owe us. And tonight you're going to pay." Adrian shifted, his voice steady. "He has nothing to do with this. Let him go." The man's head tilted, a cruel smile tugging his lips. "Still playing the savior, Hale? After all the lives you wrecked for cash? No, you'll both rot here together. Consider it justice." He left as suddenly as he had come, leaving only the echo of his words. Justice. That word tasted bitter. It was what I had lived for, what I had bled for in every article. But here, tied to a man I once condemned, I wondered if I even understood it anymore. Hours passed, or maybe minutes, I couldn't tell. My body ached, my eyelids heavy, but my mind wouldn't stop spinning. Finally, Adrian whispered, "You need to stop fighting the ropes. You're tearing your skin open." I turned my head, glaring into the dark. "What? You want me to just sit here and wait to die?" "No," he said softly. "I want you to listen." "Listen to what?" "To me." His tone was different now. No sarcasm, no bitterness. Just raw, stripped-down truth. "I wasn't the man you thought I was," he said. "Yes, I bent the law. Yes, I defended men who deserved prison. But it wasn't for greed. It was survival. They own me, Ethan. Every win in the courtroom came with chains you never saw." His words struck something deep. I wanted to dismiss them, to cling to the black and white narrative I had built around him. But his voice carried the weight of confession, the kind that costs a man everything. "I lost myself," he whispered. "But your articles, they burned everything down. You think you destroyed me, but you freed me from them." I swallowed hard, my throat aching. "Then why does it feel like I ruined you?" Adrian turned, his temple brushing against mine in the shadows. Maybe ruin was the only way to rebuild. Something cracked inside me then. Not pity, not forgiveness, but something closer to understanding. And in that understanding was danger. Because the more I saw him, the more I felt the pull. The night stretched on. At some point, exhaustion dragged me under. When I woke again, the warehouse was quiet, too quiet. Adrian's voice broke the silence. "Don't move. Just listen." I froze. Then I felt it, the subtle shift against my wrists. Adrian was working the ropes. I had no idea how he'd managed it, but slowly, deliberately, he was loosening them. "How?" "Shoo," he breathed. "You talk too much." Minutes crawled by, each heartbeat louder than the last. Then, finally, the rope around my wrist slackened. My hands were free. I sucked in a sharp breath, flexing my numb fingers. Adrian's ropes were next, but before I could help, the sound of boots echoed again. We weren't ready. The door crashed open. Flashlights cut through the dark, beams landing on us. "Look at that," the man with the drawl sneered. "The rats are trying to chew their way out." Panic surged. My hands trembled, but Adrian's grip closed over mine, steady and unyielding. "Stay with me," he whispered. "No matter what happens, don't let go." And in that moment, as the men advanced, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just fighting for my life anymore. I was fighting for his. The struggle that followed blurred into chaos. Shouts, fists, the crash of metal against concrete. Pain exploded in my ribs as I was thrown to the ground, but Adrian was there. Always there, his body a shield, his strength pulling me back to my feet. Somehow, impossibly, we broke free. The warehouse door slammed open into the night, cold air rushing against my face. My lungs burned as we ran. The city lights distant, unreachable, but there, a promise of escape. Behind us, voices roared. Bullets cracked the night air. My hand found Adrian's, our fingers locking tight, not out of choice but out of something far stronger. And as we stumbled into the dark, bloodied and breathless, I realized the cruelest twist of all. The man I had once exposed was now the only man I trusted to save me. And maybe, just maybe, the only man I couldn't bear to lose. The night air hit my lungs like ice, sharp and burning, but it was still sweeter than the suffocating dark of the warehouse. Gravel crunched under our shoes as Adrian and I sprinted down the desolate road. Our hands clasped so tightly, I could feel the tremor in his bones. Behind us, shouts and the vicious echo of gunfire carved the silence into jagged pieces. "Keep going," Adrian barked, his breath ragged. "I'm not the one slowing down," I snapped, though my chest felt like it was going to split open. The truth was we were both running on fumes, bruised, bloodied, still half-bound by ropes that dragged from our wrists, but fear kept us moving. Fear and something else, something hotter, stronger, that tethered me to him in a way I couldn't shake. We stumbled off the road, plunging into the woods where shadows stretched long under the silver wash of moonlight. Branches whipped my face, mud slicked under my shoes, but at least the gunfire faded behind us. At least for now. When we finally collapsed against a fallen log, my lungs heaving like bellows, the silence rang louder than the gunshots. I turned to him, still clutching his wrist. "They'll follow. They'll keep coming." Adrian's eyes, dark and unreadable, found mine. "Then we don't stop. Not until we make it back to the city." "You make it sound easy." He gave a dry, humorless smile. "Nothing about this is easy. Not surviving. Not forgiving. Not whatever the hell this is between us." The words landed heavy. My mouth went dry, not because of the run, but because of the way his voice cracked on that last sentence. Whatever this was between us, it was dangerous, intoxicating, and impossible to ignore. We walked through the night, the forest swallowing our footsteps. My body ached, my mind screamed for rest, but there was no room for weakness. Every rustle in the trees, every snap of a twig felt like a predator closing in. At one point, when my knees threatened to give out, Adrian's hand pressed against the small of my back. Gentle, steady. Shouldn't have mattered, but it did. You always were too stubborn, he murmured. Coming from you, that's hilarious. He almost laughed. Almost. But the sound caught in his throat, swallowed by something heavier. After hours of silence, I couldn't take it anymore. Adrian, why me? Why did they take us together? He hesitated, his jaw tightening. Because we're both threats. You exposed them. I failed them. In their eyes, we're liabilities that need to be erased. But you said I freed you. That doesn't sound like a failure. His eyes flickered in the moonlight, something raw glinting there. You don't understand. Men like them don't forgive. And if they can't control you, they destroy you. A chill ran through me. His voice wasn't just describing himself, it was describing me too. By dawn, we stumbled out of the forest and onto a stretch of highway. The horizon bled orange and gold, a cruelly beautiful backdrop to our wrecked bodies. Adrian flagged down an old pickup truck. The driver, a grizzled man in a baseball cap, looked us over with suspicion. You two look like you've been chewed up and spit out. Something like that, Adrian said smoothly. Slipping into the lawyer's charm I thought he'd lost. He spun a story. Mugged, stranded, desperate for a ride into town. The man hesitated, then finally jerked his thumb. Get in. I slid into the seat, my whole body stiff. Adrian climbed in beside me, his thigh pressing against mine in the cramped space. I should have pulled away. I didn't. The truck rattled down the highway, each mile dragging us closer to the city, closer to safety or closer to whatever waited for us there. We found refuge in a cheap motel on the edge of town, the kind of place where no one asked questions as long as you paid cash. Adrian disappeared into the bathroom, and when the shower hissed to life, I collapsed onto the bed, my body surrendering. But when he stepped out, steam curling around him, hair damp, shirt clinging to his frame, I found myself staring. Not because he was beautiful, though God, he was, but because of the weight he carried. His eyes, his scars, the shadows etched into his every movement. Don't look at me like that, he said quietly. Like what? Like you finally see me. I swallowed hard. Maybe I do. The silence stretched, thick with words unsaid. Then, as if pulled by some force beyond reason, I reached for him. My fingers brushed his, tentative, trembling. He didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned in, his forehead resting against mine, our breaths mingling in the heavy stillness. I should hate you, he whispered, for what you did to me, for tearing down my life. I should hate you too, I whispered back, for making me believe the truth was simple when it never was. And then his lips were on mine. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't soft. It was desperate, bruising, the kind of kiss born from survival and fury and everything we'd been holding back. My hands fisted in his shirt, his arms caged me in, and for the first time since waking in that warehouse, I felt alive. When we broke apart, gasping, he pressed his forehead against mine again. This changes nothing, he said, but his voice trembled. No, I whispered. It changes everything. The hours that followed blurred. Sleep, hunger, restless silence. But beneath it all was the knowledge that we couldn't hide here forever. The men hunting us wouldn't stop. By nightfall, Adrian sat at the edge of the bed, staring out the cracked blinds at the neon flicker of the streetlights. They'll expect us to run, he said. But maybe that's our chance. We stop running. We fight. I pushed up on my elbows, my body aching. Fight them? With what? We're not soldiers. No, but we have weapons they don't. You have your pen. I have what's left of my name. Together, maybe we can burn them down for good. For the first time, his voice carried not just conviction, but hope. And God help me, I wanted to believe him. Because somewhere between the ropes, the running, and that kiss, I had realized something terrifying. I didn't just want to survive. I wanted to survive with him. And if the world stood against us, then maybe it was time to stop hiding and start fighting back. The plan should have terrified me. Instead, it made my blood surge with something dangerously close to excitement. Adrian leaned over the motel's scarred table, sketching out our next move on the back of a takeout receipt. His hand moved quickly, his voice sharp, almost the way it must have sounded in a courtroom. The lawyer in him wasn't dead. He had just buried it under layers of regret and whiskey. "They won't expect us to go loud," he said. "They'll expect us to run. That's their mistake." I paced the narrow room, the carpet sticky beneath my boots. "You're suggesting we walk back into the fire, Adrian. That's not bravery. That's suicide." He looked up at me then, his dark eyes catching the weak yellow light of the lamp. "If we don't, Ethan, they'll find us. They'll drag us back to that warehouse or worse. We have one chance. We hit them first." "And what? You think two men can take down an entire network?" "No," he admitted, leaning back, his jaw tight. "But two men can shine a light so bright, the whole damn city has to look. You once believed in exposing the truth, Ethan. Do you still?" His words cut deep. My pen had always been my weapon, my shield, my salvation. But I hadn't written anything in months. Not since I started fearing the shadows in every corner. Not since I realized how many enemies I'd made. And yet, sitting there watching him, I felt that fire again. That reckless, stubborn fire. "Okay," I said, my voice rough. "We fight." We moved like fugitives through the city. Disguises cobbled together from thrift stores, burner phones bought with crumpled bills. Adrian tapped into old contacts, the kind of people who still owed him favors even after his fall. I hacked together a story, a skeleton of an article that, if published, would rip their world apart. But it wasn't enough. We needed proof. That meant going back into the lion's den. The night we decided to act, the city was alive in neon. The streets pulsed with laughter, horns, the distant wail of sirens. And yet, beneath it all, I felt the tension, the weight of every step as we approached the high-rise where their empire thrived behind polished glass. Adrian adjusted the cuff of his borrowed jacket, his face sharp and unreadable. "Stay close to me, no matter what happens." I smirked, trying to mask the quake in my chest. Not exactly planning on wandering off. Inside, the building smelled of money and fear. Men in tailored suits lingered in shadows. Deals whispered behind closed doors. We weren't welcome here, and every eye that lingered told us they knew it. We found what we came for in a dim back office. A computer humming quietly, files stacked carelessly. Evidence, names, transactions. Enough to burn the empire to the ground. As I downloaded everything onto a flash drive, Adrian stood by the door, tense, every muscle coiled. "Almost done," I whispered. But the universe doesn't wait for almost. The door slammed open. A gun leveled at us. "Going somewhere?" It was the steel-voiced man from the warehouse, his smile razor-sharp in the low light. Two more shadows flanked him, and suddenly the room was too small, the air too thin. Adrian's body shifted, instinctively stepping between me and the gun. "It doesn't have to end this way." "Oh, it ends tonight," the man said coldly. "Both of you, together." The next moments blurred into chaos. A struggle. The gun went off, deafening, shattering glass. I ducked, adrenaline flooding my veins, while Adrian lunged, his fist connecting with a sickening crack. I grabbed the flash drive, my fingers shaking, and we bolted. Hallways turned into mazes. Shouts echoed. Alarms screamed. The building became a labyrinth of terror and urgency. Every turn another trap. At one point, a hand grabbed my arm, yanking me back, but Adrian was there, slamming the attacker into the wall, his own knuckles bloodied, his breath ragged. "Run!" he shouted, and I did, because trusting him was the only thing that kept me alive. We crashed through a side door into the night, lungs burning, sirens wailing somewhere in the distance. The city sprawled around us, both salvation and trap. We ducked into an alley, pressed against the brick wall, both of us gasping, hearts pounding in sync. The flash drive was in my pocket. Proof. Hope. I turned to him, words catching in my throat. We did it. His chest rose and fell, sweat dripping down his temple, his eyes burning into mine. Not yet. They'll come harder now. They'll never stop until... Until what? I demanded. His hand lifted, trembling, brushing against my cheek as if I might vanish. Until we finish this. Together. For a moment the world shrank down to the space between us. The sirens, the danger, all of it falling away. His touch was fire. His gaze a promise I wasn't sure either of us could keep. I leaned into it anyway. Because if this was war, then he was the only ally I wanted at my side. We found refuge in a half-abandoned church, its stained glass windows cracked, the pews gathering dust. The irony wasn't lost on me. Two men the world had branded as sinners, hiding under the gaze of broken saints. Adrian lit a candle, the small flame flickering against his tired features. You know what they'll call this, don't you? You and me. I met his eyes across the glow. I don't care. They'll say it's weakness, that we've already lost. Then let them. The silence between us was thick, but it wasn't empty. It was alive, pulsing with everything we hadn't said. And when he stepped closer, when his hand slid against mine, it wasn't just survival anymore. It was surrender. We didn't sleep that night, not with the weight of the flash drive burning in my pocket, not with the knowledge that tomorrow could be the end. But for the first time in years I felt alive. I felt something more than fear, more than anger. I felt hope. And it was wrapped in the hands of the man I once believed was my enemy. The church smelled of wax and dust. The candle Adrian had lit burning low as dawn crept through the cracked, stained glass. Its colors bled across his face, shades of red and gold that made him look like a man caught between salvation and damnation. I hadn't slept. Neither had he. The flash drive felt heavy in my pocket, like it carried not just proof, but the weight of both our fates. This ends today, Adrian said, his voice steady, almost serene. One way or another. I nodded, though my throat was dry. Then let's end it. We didn't walk back into the city like fugitives anymore. We walked like men with a purpose, every step charged with defiance. The morning sun cut through the haze, the streets humming with early traffic, oblivious to the war brewing beneath their feet. I reached out and brushed Adrian's hand. He didn't pull away. The newsroom smelled of stale coffee and paper, a place I once called home. Faces turned as I walked in, whispers following me. I disappeared for days, branded reckless, paranoid, a man who had burned too many bridges. But when I dropped the flash drive onto the desk, silence fell. Run it? I told my editor, my voice stronger than I felt. Names, accounts, everything. Don't sit on it this time. His eyes widened as he scrolled through the files. He looked at me, then at Adrian, then back at me. You realize what this means? They'll come after you both harder than ever. They already did, Adrian said flatly. And for the first time, the editor said nothing more. He just picked up the phone. The machine had been set in motion. We didn't even make it out of the building before they came. Black cars, men in suits, the steel-voiced devil himself, waiting like a wolf who knew the sheep had nowhere left to run. The lobby erupted in chaos. People screamed, scattered. Guns glinted beneath jackets. Adrian grabbed my arm, pulling me behind a column. "Stay low. You're not going out there alone," I hissed. His eyes cut to mine. Fierce, protective, terrified in a way he'd never admit. "If something happens, you finish the story. Promise me." "No," my voice broke. "Not without you." There wasn't time to argue. The first shots rang out, shattering glass, sending papers flying like white birds across the marble floor. Adrian moved like a man who had nothing left to lose, shoving me down as he tackled one of the attackers. The crack of bone, the shout of rage. It all blurred. I scrambled, adrenaline white-hot, my hands finding a broken piece of marble torn from the column. I swung, and the world exploded in sound and violence. When the steel-voiced man finally cornered us, blood smeared across his jaw, he smiled like death itself. "You think you've won?" he spat. "Exposing us won't change a damn thing. We own this city." Adrian stood in front of me, battered but unyielding. "Not anymore." The sirens arrived like salvation and thunder. Police flooded the lobby, guns drawn, shouts echoing. For once, they weren't here to silence. They were here to see. Because the story had already gone live. The days that followed were a blur of headlines and courtrooms. The empire collapsed in real time. Names dragged through the mud, bank accounts frozen, powerful men cuffed and marched in front of flashing cameras. But through it all, there was Adrian. We sat together on the courthouse steps after one of the longest days, the city buzzing around us. He looked at me, his suit rumpled, his knuckles still scarred. "You saved me," he said quietly. I shook my head. "No, we saved each other." He laughed, soft and broken. "Funny, isn't it? The journalist who destroyed me ended up being the only one who gave me back my life. And the lawyer I hated most," I said, "turned out to be the man I trust with mine." Our shoulders touched, and in the golden wash of sunset, I leaned into him. No cameras, no enemies, no ropes. Just us. Weeks later, when the city finally quieted, we returned to the church. The same cracked windows, the same lingering dust. But this time we weren't hiding. Adrian lit another candle, his hand steady as he set it before us. "For the lives we lost," he said, "and for the one we found." I reached for his hand, our fingers intertwining. "We're not saints," I whispered. "No," he agreed, his smile faint but real. "But maybe we're something better. Survivors." I kissed him then, slow, certain, nothing like the desperate clash of the first time. This one was different. This one was a beginning. Because in the end, it wasn't the ropes that bound us, or the enemies who hunted us, or even the story that nearly killed us both. It was the simple, impossible truth that love had found us in the darkest place, and it refused to let go. And this time, I wasn't going to let it. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.